I got the divorce papers while I was in the desert, an email ending my 13-year marriage. My name is James, a 40-year-old staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I was 4 months into my tour in Kandahar when Eki decided she was finished waiting. The email's subject line read, "Let's be adults about this," and the message itself was brief, just 3 sentences. She had already filed the paperwork, emptied our joint account, and moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into our house in Spokane. Read the email twice, closed my laptop, and took a shower. After getting dressed for my shift, I said nothing to anyone. That night, I replied with a single word, "Understood." There was no argument, no pleading, no threats. My bunkmate, Wilson, noticed my quiet demeanor. "You good man?" he asked, without looking up. "Yeah," I said, "just some stuff back home." He nodded, and that was it. Military guys know when to drop a subject. Truthfully, I wasn't surprised. The 6 months leading up to my deployment, things had shifted. Becky stopped asking about my day and began working late at the dental office where she was an admin. She started going to the gym 3 times a week but never seemed to sweat. Buying new clothes, making new friends I never met, and adding new passwords to her phone. I didn't confront her. I didn't spy on her. That's not my style. But I wasn't blind either. I took some quiet precautions, nothing dramatic, just to be safe. I moved important documents to a storage unit across town: my birth certificate, our marriage license, the house deed, which only had my name on it thanks to the VA loan, and my military benefits paperwork. I also secured my grandfather's watch and my mother's old silver in the same unit, things that truly mattered. I opened a separate bank account and began diverting a small portion of my pay there. Just enough so she wouldn't notice, but enough so I wouldn't be left with nothing. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not her husband heading to a war zone. I should have known then, but a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I had prepared for this moment, and what she didn't understand was that I don't start fights, but I do finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010 while I was home between tours. She was finishing nursing school, but ended up working as a dental admin, which she said was less stress. We married 8 months later. Becky often said she was proud of my service, though she never really understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist. There was no one in the military in her family. She would ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the army was my career, not a temporary gig. We bought our house in 2014, 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. The VA loan was in my name only, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do. A year after we married, my father died, and my mother passed 3 years later. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough to pay off our student loans and have a nice financial cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, and each time I returned, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless. I didn't sign up to be a military wife, she told me once when I mentioned reaping for another 4 years. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood, but the army was the only place I ever felt I belonged. I was good at my job, and people depended on me. In 2019, things started to change. Becky got irritated when I called during her girls' nights. She started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. She would make comments about how we didn't have anything in common anymore. I suggested counseling, but she said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, the gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her, but my dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure, before I act. So I watched and I prepared quietly because my gut told me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after the divorce email, I was in the mess hall when I got a notification from our bank app, another withdrawal. this time for $8,500. The joint account was down to $2.37. Our $47,000 in savings was gone, transferred to an account I didn't know. That night, I called our bank from the base phone center. It turned out Becky had been moving money for weeks, with the big transfers starting the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time. Guys were laughing and calling their families, their normal lives happening while mine was falling apart. That's when Wilson found me. "Heard you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he said. "What's up?" I told him my wife had emptied our accounts, moved her boyfriend into our house, and sent me divorce papers. Wilson didn't give me the usual sympathies. He just asked, "What's your plan?" I told him I wasn't sure yet, and he nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That night, I couldn't sleep. I logged into our home security system, which Becky probably forgot I had remote access to. The cameras showed a strange truck in the driveway, a man I'd never seen walking our dog, wearing my coffee mug and my Seahawk sweatshirt, and there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I'd renovated. Something shifted inside me, not anger, but something colder, clearer. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone, making a list. Call James, my army buddy who became a lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact my master sergeant about emergency leave. Review the home refinance documents she had casually mentioned. Check the security on my military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad or angry anymore. I felt focused, like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now. It was about strategy. Before my shift started, I sent an email to James with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later, "Call me, secure line only." After that call, I knew exactly what to do. I didn't need to yell, threaten, or even confront her. I just needed to wait, watch, and let her own actions become the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil, but I didn't tell Becky. I checked into a motel in Spokane and met with James at a diner. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel like it too," I replied. James handed me a folder with all the documents we'd discussed, plus a separate paper. "Found something interesting," he said. It was a refinance application with my signature on it, but it wasn't mine. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern was off. "Becky did this?" I asked. James nodded. 3 months ago. Used the equity to pull out $30,000. Your signature is required for that, since the VA loan is in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan, clear out our accounts, and divorce me, I said. "Busy woman." "It gets better," James said. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. "He's got a record to DUS and a fraud charge." I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," James said. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I thought for a moment. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. James smiled. "Then, here's what we do." The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched, resisting the urge to knock on the door. Instead, I went to the bank, met with the loan officer, and showed him my military ID, the real signature on my license, and the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately," he said. "I understand," I replied. "I've already filed a police report." That night, Becky texted me. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I filed paperwork at the county clerk's office, contesting the refinance and ensuring no changes could be made to the property without my presence. Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk." The bank called. "About the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." The same words from her email. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. "They froze the refinance money," he said. "And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend was driving your truck, the one in your name." He got pulled over this morning for driving with a suspended license. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. "He also had some interesting things in the truck," James added. "Prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank." I closed my eyes. "She's been stealing prescription pads. Looks that way. The police are investigating." I hung up, sitting on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. Part of me wanted to warn Becky, but I remembered the security camera footage. My house, my dog, my life, given away like it meant nothing. This was the path now, and I couldn't, and didn't want to, turn back. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator, a guy named Thompson. "This happens more often than you'd think," he said. "Spouse deploys. Other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now?" I asked. Thompson explained that the fraudulent funds were frozen, but some of the money was already gone, about half. $14,600. He showed me the transfers. The money went to someone named Daniel Spencer. "Who is Daniel Spencer?" I asked. Thompson shrugged, telling me to ask my lawyer. I called James, who ran a check on the name. "Got it?" he said an hour later. "Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent who specializes in quick sales and cash deals. She was planning to sell our house," I said. The realization hit me hard. Looks that way. The deposits were likely earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But it got more interesting. Spencer had done business with Jeremy Ryan before. They had closed 3 deals together in the last 2 years. I sat on a park bench, trying to process this. This wasn't just Becky leaving me. It was a planned operation. James confirmed he found a pattern with Jeremy he would get involved with. Women going through a divorce or with deployed spouses, and their homes would be sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Jeremy would get a cut, then move on. Becky knew about this. I asked. James said it was hard to say if she was a victim or in on it. I rubbed my face. This was bigger than my betrayal. Other military families had been victims. "What do we do?" I asked. "I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crime Division," James said. "This crosses state lines, involves military personnel and VA loans. They're interested." That night, my phone buzzed. "Becky again. Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud, and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" The dots appeared as she typed, then stopped, then started again. Finally, "I don't know what you're talking about." I wrote, $14,600, multiple transfers, house listing, no response for 10 minutes. Then, "It's not what you think." I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, James called. The FBI wanted to meet with me. They had been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. "You're not the first," he said, "but you might be the case that breaks it open." For the first time since that email, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. I met with FBI agents, Patel and Donovan. They recorded my statement and took copies of our documents. "Your case helps establish a pattern," Agent Patel explained. "Shows intent, organization, makes it a conspiracy." I asked about Becky. They were still determining her involvement. Donovan asked if she had ever mentioned financial difficulties or pressure to sell the house. I remembered her saying we were house poor and should downsize, which I didn't see the need for. Patel made a note. "When did that start?" "About 6 months ago," I said. "Around the time she must have met Jeremy." They told me not to confront Becky or Jeremy, as they needed to build their case carefully. I understood. That evening, I drove back to our neighborhood. Jeremy's truck was back, and Becky's car was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Becky. "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow." I showed the text to James the next morning. He advised me not to go. "I won't," I said, "but I want to know what she's doing today." We drove to our house and parked across the street. Becky came out, got in her car, and drove away. We waited. 20 minutes later, a car with a real estate agent logo pulled up. It was Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him, and they went inside. "Should we follow them?" James asked. I shook my head. "No need," I said, pulling out my phone. I installed security cameras last year. They upload to cloud storage. I opened the security app and angled the screen so James could see Spencer and Jeremy in our living room. Spencer was taking photos. "Should list by the end of the week," he said. "I've got a buyer interested already, cash offer as usual." "How much?" Jeremy asked. $420. We listed $470. They offer $420. Everybody's happy. "What about the husband?" Jeremy asked. Spencer waved dismissively. "Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a settlement to make it go away." James was already recording the feed on his phone. I forwarded the security feed to Agent Patel with a short message, "Happening now." 30 minutes later, our house was surrounded by FBI vehicles. Agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. My phone rang. It was Agent Patel. "Got them on tape, discussing the fraud scheme," she said, "plus conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We're going to need a formal statement from you," she said. "Of course," I replied. "And Mr. Briggs, your wife, just arrived at the scene. She's distressed." I looked down the street. Becky was standing on our lawn, hands over her mouth, watching as agents carried boxes from the house. "What happens to her?" I asked. "That depends," Patel said, "on what she knew and on what you want." I watched Becky for a long moment, thinking of our 13 years together. "I just want what's right," I finally said. The federal case moved quickly. Jeremy and Spencer both took plea deals, implicating each other and several other conspirators in a 3-state operation targeting military families. Becky maintained she knew nothing about the larger scheme, claiming Jeremy convinced her I was hiding money and planning to leave her with nothing. She agreed to a settlement: full restitution of stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my pension, and a signed confession about the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. Our divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Kandahar. On the day the paperwork was signed, Agent Patel called. "Jeremy Ryan was sentenced today. 8 years. Spencer got 12. Thought you'd want to know." "Thank you," I said. "There's something else," she added. "We found evidence they've done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped. US billed the pattern. Those families might get their money back because of you." After we hung up, I sat on my porch, thinking about those other families, other men who thought their homes were safe. I hadn't planned on being the one to bring them down, but sometimes things work out in ways you don't expect. A year later, I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many memories, too much betrayal. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside of Missoula, Montana, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land, a creek running behind it, and no neighbors for miles. I took an early retirement from the Army. 20 years was enough. I got a German Shepherd named Scout and started doing carpentry work for locals. My military pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Becky, but I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't feel much of anything, to be honest. She made her choices, and so had I one evening. I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away." I read it twice and pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence was too loud or the memories too sharp, I'd look at that letter and remember that something good came from all of it. Last I heard, Jeremy and Spencer were still in prison. The system worked for once. As for me, I was finding my way forward, one quiet day at a time, building something new. Something that couldn't be stolen or betrayed. Something that was just mine.